Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Yeah, I went back a little bit. There's a little bit of room there.
A little bit. Listen, yeah. I'm concerned that you're going to like slam into the wall and bash your head and get a concussion. Yeah, and listen, I need you to be on your game, sir. So none of that.
It's a tight fit here for sure, but it's good enough, and we'll take it. So
we'll make it work. We'll make it work. Well, happy Muse Day.
Yes,
what
I'm
are
just
you
noticing. Well, I'm going to get my hair cut today, but it's just it's so tall, and the little shelf makes it look taller. So.
I wasn't gonna say anything. I thought, well, we're just it's a new phase in life. It's a new year, new you. We're just gonna.
I will say I was inspired by Greg's sermon because that afro
I was wondering
when he was in school.
I was wondering that picture. Listen, this is what I will say to folks, giving a little bit away here. Some people podcast the sermons because they're on the go, blah blah blah. I'm going to encourage you to find a nice place and sit in and be cozy and actually watch this one because you are going to see a pictorial illustration, a picture of Greg when he was a junior in high school right before his prom. And holy buckets.
Yeah, make sure you're not carrying anything fragile or valuable and make sure you're in a safe space because it is... Yeah. It's shocking.
Make sure you're not drinking hot coffee. Make sure you're not sitting across from anyone that you could spew out a liquid when you laugh. It's you need to be prepared and you need to see this visually. It is going to make your year.
Yeah, I did not know that was possible for a white person to have an afro like that, and it was it was
a masterpiece.
At the same time, I kind of liked it. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
It was a masterpiece.
I kind of liked it. So
just I bet if he could, he would. If he could, he would in 2026.
Heck yeah.
Amazing. Loved it. Well, happy Muse Day. Y'all pray for Dan. Listen, haircuts for Dan, it's a fork in the road. Sometimes it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he has issues. Now, I always think he looks great, so I'm not but from Dan's perspective, he has shared. Mm-hmm. it's a bit
traumatic.
Of a gamble.
It's been traumatic. So for sure.
Okay. So y'all be praying for Dan, and we'll see what shakes down and what he looks like next week. But happy Muse Day. Happy 2026. First Muse Day of the new year, and it's good to start another year with you guys. Thank you for being here. He's Dan Kent. I'm Shawna Boren, and this is the MuseCast, where we chat, we unpack, we discuss things from the sermons at Woodland Hills Church, of which we are a part of. So welcome. We're glad that you're here. We are currently in week 2 of our Love Does series. And boy, oh boy, did this series start off with a bang. Yeah. Hello, darkness, my old friend. It was amazing. Check it out. Now, if you want to go back and watch the first sermon, which Dan Kent gave, you'll be like, what are you talking about? Well, that's because Dan did the extra work of going in and re-recording his sermon, because that was during his sermons when we had the grand power outage of 2025. The year was literally like, we are done. Shut her down.
Yeah.
So Dan went back in, recorded it, and so you should see that, no problem. And then this week, Greg took us into week 2 and talked to us about love does not dishonor. And one thing that I want to say before you get started on your sermon, Dan, is one of the points in Greg's sermon. I'm going to give this away, so spoiler alert. He was talking about how it never, it doesn't say, it just says love does not dishonor. And so in my brain, I always want to go, love does not dishonor others. But that's not what's there. And Greg talked a little bit about that, so I don't want to give too much away. So all that to say, I have the title right. It is Love Does Not Dishonor, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Whew.
I think that's right. So,
okay.
Yeah. I will say I agree. This series has kicked off well. I think just this topic, this is kind of the love passage, and that's what we are called to be. We're called to be agape lovers, and so this is kind of where it all kind of emerges from. This is the garden of that love, where we can go and see what that's supposed to look like. And those are really weird metaphors. I don't know if they make any sense, but I'm going with it and I'm pressing on. Yeah. So he kind of starts off his sermon. But let me just say this first of all. I think 30 some years, I think we've been a church, and Greg has been preaching. And, I just finished my 50th sermon, and I think he's probably at a 1,500 now, maybe a couple thousand. And I'll just say that I've sort of worked really hard to, when I do a sermon, to just do something that I haven't talked about before. And there's going to be some crossover, but, for me, even for my own sake, I like to, keep my reading of the scripture fresh and to keep my faith fresh. And I'm always looking for something there because it's a living word. It's alive and it's active, and it comes from a living God, and we're supposed to have a living faith. And so there should be like new treasures that we find. And I just got to say, listening to this sermon, Greg has been just such a steadfast role model of just finding these new perspectives and new angles on this. And this sermon, I thought, was just such a great contribution to this series. And it's just another, what would you say? Another instance, another episode of kind of this, fresh reading of the text that we've come to expect from Greg, and just really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And so that was on my heart. So I wanted to say that. But yeah, so he starts off by talking about the context of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 and 5, where we're told that, without this type of love, all of these things that the Corinthians were very proud of, they were very boastful about, and they were getting all sorts of attention for, Paul's just like, that stuff is not important to you guys. It's just, it doesn't mean anything if you don't have this over here as well. Because the point is that I think what God is calling us to is something that we do together, not something that we do alone. And all of these kind of Corinthians were just trying to be their own thing. And Paul basically just kind of shuts them down here. And that's the context that this section of text comes in. And so we find in 1 Corinthians 13, 4 and 5, we find this phrase that love does not dishonor. And the Greek word there is askimon, that means to dishonor, and it has to do with hierarchical status. And societies will always have the strata, the people who are benefited by the society and those who are not. And so in this society, you had the emperor on top, you had the commoners, and then you had the freed commoners who used to be slaves, and then you have the slaves. And then women were sort of an associated category altogether, and their standing was based on where their husband was in the strata. And so that's sort of the context that we come in. So to dishonor, to this askimon, had to do with making one's place known on this strata. So you would make it clear that the person that you're engaging is beneath you. And so there's this denigrating kind of quality to it. And this really sort of emerges from kind of our biological nature, our human nature, this kind of ferocious nature that we have, that God is trying to spiritually guide us out of. And Greg calls it ape culture. It's this king of the hill sort of, you're always striving to be on top and trying to ascend this ladder. And it's in that culture that Paul says, do not dishonor. In other words, don't even play this game, is what Paul is saying. And Greg does a cool job here. He looks at how does this relate to Romans 12, 1 and 2, which is sort of a famous passage. And, what Romans 12, 1 and 2 says, "Do not be conformed any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And that pattern of this world, that is systematizo, that's the Greek word there, that this is the pattern, this hierarchical king of the hill sort of way of thinking. And so this concept of love basically challenges and overthrows that whole thing. And this is a big reason why so much of the ethical force of the Old Testament and Jesus's teaching has to do with redeeming those who are low on this strata, because they are the ones who are feeling the brunt of this ungodly pattern. And so that's why we have all of these things about the poor and the widow and the refugee and so forth. Well, so that is sort of the basis of Greg's teaching for this week. And he pulls 2 points out of this. He says, the first point is that we have to wake up to the ways that we might unwittingly be dishonoring others. And because he talks about how we all grow up with these filters about who's in and who's out, or who's up and who's down, and all of that. And he gave a couple really great examples how, when he grew up, because of his dad, just listening to his dad, he kind of grew up assuming that people with a Southern accent were racists and they were not smart. and so Greg kind of confessed to this sort of bias that he had against that. And we've known Greg for a long time, and he has sort of, made light of the Southern accent sometimes in his sermon. And so what's cool to see about that is it's cool to see how getting free from that, it is a process. And so I thought that was just a great example of this unwitting way that Greg was dishonoring others. And it is a really cool confession. He also shared a really cool story about I call it the Queen and the Rich Man, where after one of his sermons, he had this lady who was sort of off-putting, and he also had a guy at the back of the line who he knew was this wealthy person who wanted to, explore being part of the church. And Greg felt all of these sort of worldly, materialistic impulses kind of fueling him to want to talk to the rich guy and just kind of be done with this woman who had bad breath and was, whatever, all these reasons why he just wanted to be done with it. And he realized that this was dishonoring for this woman. And so it's just another example of how easy it is to become dishonoring of people. And so I just think that is such a great takeaway for this part of the First Corinthians passage. And then the second kind of takeaway is that we have to trust that God will never dishonor or shame us. If God is love, and if this is what love is, and that means to not dishonor, well, then the source of perfect love would not dishonor. And that's a big deal, because a lot of people they walk around with this picture of God who is ashamed of them, and who does dishonor them. And that's really powerful, and it sabotages our will to pursue God. And so I think this is an important takeaway. He uses as an example of his own life where he felt this sort of debilitating shame when he got caught shoplifting. And so his dad just said, he's holding up this arrest form or whatever, and he's like, well, what should we do with this? And he just, oh man, parents know just the right thing, but dad says, how about if we put this up next to your brother's trophies? And just so, yeah, ouch indeed. And that, and that really, he carried that in his heart, and that was a heavy anchor in his heart for a long time. And so when you realize that God is not here to dishonor or to shame you, even though we do wrong, and even though God wants us to do right, and even though we have to face the consequences of our choices and all of that, God's attitude towards us is one of honor and love, and he seeks to dignify us, not to shame us. And then Greg sort of finished this all off with a really cool meditation that I will leave people to watch on the video. Mm-hmm. And so with that, that is my summary. Did you get a chance to see the whole sermon? Because I know you were traveling, so.
I was traveling, and so I wasn't able to experience all of that live. But yeah, no, I listened and saw it, and I'm again, I will say, as someone who listens, of course, this one, please watch. And to Dan's point about the closing exercise, I would encourage everyone to take some time and just kind of walk yourself through that. Even if you were there or were able to do that in real time, maybe do that again, because I just think it was just a really beautiful way to end the service. And yeah, it was just, I don't know, just even coming through online, it just felt very powerful. So yeah, I really enjoyed that we were able to do that as a church body. And I encourage folks to walk yourself through that. It was really good. Yeah, this message was I just want to echo what you were saying. I am so thankful that after hearing so many really good sermons and teachings from Greg, that I just, man, I really appreciate him as a leader and a teacher, of course, as a theologian and a preacher. There is still so much richness that I feel like I glean from listening, and there is so much growth that nothing that we're saying is like revolutionary or new, other than it's just what we sense God wanting to say to us as a church community. And I'm just really in a place of gratitude for all of that. And so, yeah, I'm glad you took a moment to share that from your heart, Dan. This sermon really was one of those that, I don't get a pass. I don't get a pass. And I do pretty good, I will say. I'm pretty intentional in my life about not being rude or disrespectful to people or to places. I do pretty good, I feel like, and I'm very intentional about, dignity and respect and all of that. Where I struggle is in my thought process. So and for me, this sermon was like, you don't get a pass because for me, I don't know if I'm saying this well, Dan. It's not just about how I act, but it is how I think and how I regard folks. And so it's one thing to pretend as if I respect someone or something. And it's another thing to truly make a determination that, no, I will not dishonor. I will not think dishonoring. I will not, behave dishonoringly toward someone or something. And so, yeah, this one really, it struck some nerves for me. Loved the story about when he was in high school as a born and raised Southern woman. I appreciate his honesty and sharing that, because I thought it was a beautiful picture of how we all approach this world with a lens, depending on where we were born, how we were, raised. There's all these things. We have a lens, we have biases, and we have thoughts, and sometimes, many times, those things need to be disproven. So I love that story, and then I was really touched by the story about, like you said, the queen and the rich man.
The rich man, yeah.
Just how he sensed just the Spirit saying, "Hey, this is my queen," and he said it much more beautifully and eloquently than that. But man, just the vulnerability and the honesty again there, just to show like the patterns of this world is that system of better than, hierarchy, ladder, all of that. And we're not to play into that. And so it was a great reminder. Again, it definitely pierced the heart in some ways. And I'm thankful that we are diving into this series and talking about these things, because I think it's really apropos and helpful.
Yeah. I will say this, it's interesting that the first two sermons of this series both me and Greg confessed to stealing when we were teenagers. And I just think that's interesting. And I don't know what it
Yep.
means, but I will also add
Mm.
this. Greg got caught. I did not. I don't know what it means, but I don't know what it means, but I'll just leave that out
accomplished
there.
on the hierarchy of thievery. Who performed better? That's hilarious. I can almost guarantee you that there will be no stories of stealing this during this next sermon. Not that there wouldn't be a place for it. That's just not gonna be revealed in this next sermon. Oh goodness. One of the joys of this series is we have these clubs, these Love Does clubs where they're discussing the sermon. And so I get to be in one with some of our volunteers. And so we had this discussion already about the sermon, and it was really cool to hear the different perspectives of folks and what they heard and experienced in the sermon. And there was just this, I'm going to say, universal thought that we were all really challenged, and the idea of dishonor, like that yes, is geared toward others, but also ourselves, and also creation, the world in which we live and inhabit. And it just brought the challenge to so many layers. And so I was just really struck by that, because I was just hearing that around, the group from folks. So that was really cool.
Yeah. How are those Love Does groups? Are they, this is, because did we do one last week, or did we just start them this week?
We started them this week. We pushed. So the one that I'm a part of waited a week because of the power outage, and it meets, the day that it meets it's Monday. And so I think you had just re-recorded, and there just wasn't time for them to watch the sermon. So we pushed it off a week. So we kind of did a combo. Yeah.
Can people still sign up for those? Because I know that they're not ongoing like some of the other things that we do. They're just for this series. Yeah. And so they're nice. They're nice and contained here. But if people haven't signed up, can they still sign up? And then that's just
they absolutely can
on the bulletin page, probably.
This is what I'll say. Yes, you can find more info on the bulletin page, but really quickly, if for any volunteers, they just email me, because that one meets online, and so they'll need a link. And then there are a couple that meet on site, and those you can show up. Just show up and be a part of it during the series. That's great. There's always open chairs there. So yeah, easy peasy.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. I do have a question that Wade sent in. But he sent it in for a couple sermons ago.
Okay.
But it kind of applies to this, I think. But he just wanted more. He wanted more discussion, because Greg had talked about the difference between happiness and joy, and how happiness is kind of dopaminergic, and joy is more serotonergic. So he just wanted more discussion on that. And I think it applies to this, because I think that so often what makes us happy, that is, activates our dopamine, oftentimes that's something that's not good for us. So for instance,
Tell
sugar.
me more. Yeah,
sugar activates our dopamine, but too much sugar is destructive. And drugs are all dopaminergic. They tend to mess with your dopamine, and obviously they create addiction, and they fry you out, and then you can't have those highs except through drugs. And so all of those are so just because you're happy, it doesn't mean that you're healthy. It doesn't mean that you're into something good. Whereas joy tends to be associated with goodness. And I think all of that applies here, because a lot of times it feels good to be up in the strata, to be high on the hierarchy. And and people feel superior, and that feeling of superior can be kind of euphoric, but it's I think counteractive to real joy, because if you are getting life, as Greg says, from being high on this hierarchy, you are affirming and approving a structure that is anti-relationship, because people could be high on the hierarchy and have lots of friends on that hierarchy, but these types of people will also then not want to be friends with you if you are low on the hierarchy, which means that if you fail and you fall, then the relationship is in jeopardy. In other words, in order to live and get life off of that hierarchy, you inadvertently kind of live into a conditional love, and that's not the type of thing that can build lasting, strong relational bonds. And it just so happens that it's lasting relational bonds that activate our serotonin, which is sort of the biological basis of joy, which is something that's longer lasting and more permanent than just mere happiness. And so I do think that all applies, and so I think it's important, and that distinction is really important to keep in mind as well. So I thought it was a good question from Wade, and I thought this might be a spot where we could stick it in there.
Yeah, no, that I that's why I said, tell me more, because I was curious how you're going to make the connection, but I think I agree. I do. I think there is a really good connection there. And I do wonder, and I don't know that we always consciously do this, but yeah, whenever we are looking to feel superior, I do think it is an element of, trying to prove something within ourselves, to fill something within ourselves, to attain that happiness that, but really it's not. It is not, because we know where true joy lies. And it's just another subtle way in which I'm going to say the enemy tries to keep us at with ourselves and with this world that we inhabit. And so, yeah, waking up to that, I think is really, really wise. And I think it plays into one of Greg's closing points of, wake up to ways in which we dishonor, prayerfully be asking the Lord to show you ways in which we dishonor, because I don't think we are always aware. And I think you just highlighted another way in which we dishonor. And so I think wisdom would say, yeah, let's be alert. Let's be wise, and yeah, not fall prey to the schemes of the enemy there.
Yep. That's right.
Good deal. Tell me, Dan, about all the ways in which you have discovered that you dishonor. No, I'm kidding.
Hey,
kidding.
This show is not long enough. So.
Yeah, I know.
You know who? I mean, I'm anti-hierarchy, and except for Swifties, they're on a whole different level. They're Swifties.
Okay.
And Laker fans. Oh my goodness.
Okay, buddy.
They just think they're so special.
Whoa. Luca. Oh. Anyway, out of love, I'm gonna let you get away with all of that. But this is what I will say, because we're not here. There is not enough time in the world. But one of the things I talked about this in the club was, I just love our church so much, and I am so proud of the ways in which we serve others, and I think it's beautiful and it's good, and I think it's a beautiful way of how we feel led to partner with God. And even in that, I've had to catch myself, because that can easily turn to snubbing my nose at other religious organizations and feeling like we've got it, and they're a bunch of bozos, and that is dishonor, and that's not okay. And so, so I think we don't, maybe I'm just trying to make myself feel better, but I think we won't have to think long and hard, if we're asking the Lord to show us that there are spaces and places in our life where
Yeah.
we slip into dishonor. And I
Yeah.
just think it's important to wake up to that, to repent of that, be mindful, and just kind of change the thinking there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And also just to be clear, Lord, I'm not asking to be shown my weaknesses. So just that was hypothetical. That was hypothetical that Shawna was giving. So you don't have to. I have enough of my weaknesses exposed, and so I'm gonna
Yeah.
work on enough to work
Our
on.
cup is full.
My cup is full. Lots of stuff to work on. So
Don't need any more. All right, Dan. Well, this it feels weird. I don't time is what even is time right now? I'm so discombobulated. But this is only week 2 of
yeah,
the series, and it feels longer. I'm not sure why. I think it's just because of this time of year and everything. But I say all that to say this is just week 2, so there's going to be more to come and more discussion, and so I know that more questions and talking points will come through, but it's still kind of early yet. So with that, I am so curious to see
well,
what a nugget. Oh, here we go. Nugget time.
I had
Oh,
to
first
I had
nugget
some
dance of
hassles.
2026.
Yes, I had some hassles with the pool noodles, but other than that, I think I pulled it out. So yeah.
Yeah, you did good. I like it. Do you want to nugget first or nugget
I have no
last?
preference. Trying to think if my nugget. I don't know. I have no feeling on mine. Mine is more of a strategic informational nugget. So it's not like a contemplative, you know, nugget. So it might not be a
Okay,
good
let's
bow.
start there.
Okay, we'll start here then.
Okay,
Okay. Let me
yeah.
I'll switch to Nugget Cam here. Okay, so here's my Nugget and you kind of hinted at it, and but I think it's just so important to remember that point that you made about Paul saying that love does not dishonor, because it's not just others; it can also be ourselves or creation, and I think for me something that I've learned that I've strived for is to kind of ground all of my motivations on kind of the fact that I am made in the image of God, and to honor that, and to ground it on the fact that you and everyone else is also made in the image of God, and to ground all of my motivations and attitudes towards other people on that. And and that looks different in a lot of different situations, but for example, just like it's so easy in our culture to become obsessed with like health and fitness and youth, and we idolize those things in our culture, and so we're all sort of trying to be healthy and eat healthy and exercise. And I noticed a while ago that it just the motivation to do that is different when I think of, like, instead of thinking I want to be like a superstar, like physical athlete kind of thing, or where I have like this picture of this ideal kind of Brad Pitt sort of image in my head, that's not really sustainable as a motivation. But when I think of, okay, this body is a gift, and it's something that God gives me because he loves me, and he's given it to me to possess and to use. Well, now suddenly that motivation feels different. Now I'm not trying to, be like a certain person, which tends to be hierarchical, like elite in this category or whatever. I just want to do the best I can with this great gift that God has given me, because I want to honor that gift. I want to honor the gift that God has given me, and that's hard to do, and we all we all fail. But my internet connection's a little unstable, so I will leave it at that. Just to say, for me, my nugget is to ground your motivations and everything that you do on the fact that we are honorable, and those around us are honorable because we are made in God's image and because God loves us, and to treat everyone and ourselves and the earth accordingly.
Well said. Well said, Dan. My nugget is going to start how you started the show. At the start of the show, you said that we are called to be agape lovers.
Oh, I
And
thought it was my
I think that
haircut. I
is
was worried
so
about that.
true.
I was
Okay, well, that is not a part of the nugget.
okay. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Maybe next week. Maybe
Yeah.
next week the haircut will be the topic of my nugget.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
After the haircut, you said something very profound. You said we are called to be agape lovers. And I think that is so true. So many times we are looking for ways in which we are called to live out our faith. And there are a ton of resources that we could go to get that information. And I am not knocking that. I think that is wonderful. And we should always be striving to grow and to expand. But it really does come down to this, that we are called to be agape lovers, and the way in which we know how to love is by looking at the God of all creation, and looking to Jesus, and in that they have paved the way for us. It is a bullseye to strive towards, because we're human, we are not perfect, but we need to be striving towards that. And Greg ended the sermon talking about how God will not dishonor or shame us, and that he looks upon us lovingly and in relationship, and even those areas and spaces in which we're messing up and we're mucking it up and we're not doing things right. There is not dishonor or shame there. It is because of love, because of who he created us to be, that he wants us to lay things aside that entangle us and weigh us down and hold us back. And so my nugget is for, in order to truly live out this life as an agape lover, to model after the one who is agape love. And that one who is agape love does not dishonor. And so we should not dishonor others, ourselves, creation, and in doing so, God. Like, when we dishonor others, I believe we dishonor God. When we dishonor ourselves, I believe we dishonor God. When we dishonor this world, I believe it's dishonoring to God, because God is the creator. He is. And so now I say that knowing that's a heavy, not burden, but that responsibility, but one that I feel like we can together strive toward. And that's what we're called to do. That is something else you said after the haircut at the top of the show, was that that God is calling us to do this stuff together. And so that's all a roundabout way of saying that's my nugget. All right, you guys, thank you for being here with us today, and tuning in. Like we said, Happy New Year, and please continue to send in questions, comments, your hellos to, yep, right there, MuseCast@whchurch.org. We will be back next week to discuss more in the Love Does series. Until then, have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you so much.